Hello, sisters and brothers. As we approach a new year, and that always makes me reflect on time, the time of the past, looking forward to the time of the future, I want to reflect on some of those moments that God comes into our lives, moments that I like to refer to as God moments, where God comes down in time and touches our lives. And often we don't see this except for in hindsight. I'd like to share some examples of God moments in my life with you, and then encourage you to look back at your life and look to see those God moments, and then kind of keep an eye out for those God moments in the upcoming year and see that God is truly active and present in our lives. The first God moment I'd like to talk about it goes back to my grandfather Seitz. My grandfather Seitz died on Christmas Eve. And a lot of people would say, wow, how tragic, what a sad Christmas season that would bring. But in hindsight, you look back at it, and Christmas Eve was my grandfather's absolute favorite day of the year. You look back at it and you go, what a blessing that God called him home to live in the kingdom of heaven on his favorite day of the year. And then I think of my grandmother Aiken. Now, my grandmother Aiken was from Scotland. Everybody called her May, but her given name was Margaret. Her funeral was held on the feast of St. Margaret of Scotland. And you look back at that and you say, wow, isn't that awesome that Margaret from Scotland was buried on the feast of St. Margaret of Scotland? Again, I look at that as a God moment, God's way of saying, I'm calling her home to be with me in eternity. I think of my good friend Deacon Jim. I went to the seminary with Jim. Jim was a pharmacist, worked at a Catholic hospital. And believe it or not, Jim was fired from his job as a Catholic pharmacist working at a Catholic hospital for refusing to dispense the morning after pill. And he went through several years of struggle after that incident. And then he died on the feast of St. Cosmas and Damian. Now, why is that significant? Well, Cosmas and Damian are the patron saints of pharmacists. So here we have a Catholic pharmacist, witness to his faith, died on the feast of the patron saints of pharmacists. I look at that and I say, that can't be a coincidence. That is a God moment in our life. I think of John. John I got to know over the last few years. If he would have lived a few more years, he would have been my father-in-law. John died restfully, peacefully in his sleep on the Feast of the Holy Family. Now, why is that significant? As I reflected on that, I thought if anybody that knows John knew that the most important single thing in his life on this earth was his family. He cared for, provided for, protected for, and loved his family. He was all about family. Anybody that knew John knew family was key for him. And to die on the Feast of the Holy Family was truly a blessing and a grace from God. I also look at some God moments in my life that didn't have to do with people dying. But for instance, I was elected as the minister of the Divine Mercy region of the Secular Franciscan Order on August 8th, which happened to be the anniversary of my profession into the order. That's, a nice little, sort of an indication from God that is where he was calling and that was I meant to be. Most recently, after working for over 35 years in corporate America, I was laid off. And I was laid off on August 8th, the anniversary of my profession into the Secular Franciscan Order. I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that was God's way of saying, I have something more for you to do. So sisters and brothers, look for these God moments. To me, these are like little sticky notes. You get up in the morning, you go and you look at your refrigerator and you have a little sticky note from God that says, hey, don't worry, I got this. So I ask that the Lord richly bless you in this upcoming year. And as always, may the Lord grant you his peace.